So we are here for another prequel of not only Star Wars, but also a prequel to our upcoming Clone Wars Conversations show, which is coming out in 2024. And that's where we're going to aim to talk about a Clone Wars season or part of a season each month throughout 2024, because we enjoyed Star Wars Rebels reviewed so much, and Maff has never seen Clone Wars. So today we are continuing what we did, which was released a few weeks ago, which was the Phantom Menace. It was a rewatch of that. I've seen that film a ridiculous amount of times, and Dave's seen it a few times. Maff hadn't actually seen it that many times, which did surprise me. And now we're going into Attack of the Clones, which is, when Phantom Menace I think came out, people said that was the worst, but I think since then people say Attack of the Clones is the worst. Now the sequels have come out, that's maybe shifted a little bit. I, however, am an Attack of the Clones stan. I absolutely love this film. It's flawed, but I adore it. I have fond memories, which we'll get into, and I didn't even rewatch it for this watch, friends. I'm sorry. I know it more than probably any other film in existence. But joining me on this journey, as always, as has done for the Star Wars Rebels review chat and other Star Wars conversations and many more to come, is Maff and Dave. So we'll do as we normally do with the usual order. We'll go to Dave first because Maff's got something fun to tell us, to tease us with for the end. But Dave, Attack of the Clones, just first memory when you saw this, compared to how, like, have you watched it since, between watching it the first time and now, that kind of the journey of Attack of the Clones for you?
So I think after Phantom Menace, I was still on my roller coaster of emotions between flip-flopping between, really enjoyed it. And it's Star Wars, isn't it? And, it's got some good stuff in there too. Actually, that was really shit. But, when the next one came out, I think I'd accepted that it was a bit shit, but I was still hopeful. And I was thinking, well, the next one's got to be better, and there was a huge build up to it as well. And saw it, I'm pretty sure I saw it in the first week. Can't specifically remember, but I'd have been so excited. I would have seen it pretty soon after it came out in the cinema. And I watched it, and then, for a lot of the movie, was going through the same emotions of, oh God, what is this? It fucking looks like Blade Runner. It's not what I recognized as Star Wars. But then you have the battle scene at the end, and that's the thing that kind of lives in your memory. But I remember being at the cinema and it shows up, and the fucking what I thought at the time, like, stormtroopers show up and they're the goodies, like Yodas with stormtroopers. I mean, can you imagine if the SS turned up? Hey, it's us, Achtung, we've come to save you. You'd be like, fucking hell, it's the SS. So I just remember being shocked by that. No, obviously they're not stormtroopers. We know now they're clone troopers. But yeah, and then I think post watching it that first time, and then I got it on DVD and whatever. And I think it was in between that, getting it on DVD, and then Revenge of the Sith coming out. I just made my mind up then. These prequels are shit. Like, really, really shit. Like, they're just not what I recognize. The synthetic feel, all of the CGI, it just wasn't that grubbiness, that worn-in look of the original trilogy Star Wars. So by the time Revenge of the Sith comes around, I'm not out. I'm going to watch it, of course, but I'd already made my mind up. Okay, this is something different to Star Wars. This is almost like a different universe. So yeah, that was
nice. Rip my heart out. Before I go to Maff, I will quickly note something that's fun, a bit of trivia for Attack of the Clones. They actually, and I think this was only really announced in a recent interview with Ewan McGregor, where it was all of the audio for Attack of the Clones had to be re-recorded afterwards. Because George Lucas had this, like, it was a certain machine on that was specific to do with one of the special effect types or something, and it was so loud, this big hum in the background, it basically destroyed all audio, so they had to redo all the audio.
Right.
So, which may explain in some ways why parts feel a bit disjointed and why certain dialogue is like, where's the emotion in this? That might be one, and that's only been a recent thing. I think when he said that in the interview, I think probably everyone who was on Attack of the Clones was like, oh no one's, no one said that before. But Maff, with you, Phantom Menace, you really surprised me. You only watched it once at the cinema and then maybe once since then. With Attack of the Clones, is your journey similar? And how has it been since the release in 2002?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I again, I think I'd come back home, and I will live. I think I'd been living with my parents. Now. I think I went with my dad to go watch this, and I remember us coming out and just kind of it, it, it again. The kind of like in the first one. The first one was saved by Duel of the Fates to a certain degree. This they've done the same again. There's a big battle, a big scene, and a big and you kind of come out and you think, oh, yeah, yeah, it's all right. But the problem is because it's a middle film. At this point, he was going to make sure he did this trilogy. It kind of felt like it were missing. It never had that proper ending, which we've seen like Lord of the Rings and what have you. You get the middle films and they just kind of they feel like a filler. And again, if it weren't for that big battle scene, it would have really struggled. Going back and watching it again now, whoa. I'm going to upset you, I think. There's good parts of it. There is good parts of it, but you realise how creepy Anakin is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, stalker vibes, or I mean, it's just a little bit too full on at times, and it made me feel uncomfortable watching it at times. You're thinking, well, hang on a minute here, just kind of take a step back here, guy, and it seems like he does it near the start and kind of double down even more and more and more. And I don't think I really picked that up the first time I'd watched it. One of the second, obviously things have moved along in 20 years, and we are more aware of stuff, which is a good thing. But you realise that Anakin, kind of calm down a bit. I understand you're a teenager and you have emotions and that, but I think you need to kind of go take a cold shower at some point here.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, right, because I was going to bring this up later, but I'll bring it up now.
Do it.
It shouldn't be that much of a surprise that Space Hitler is a bit fucking rapey, but he is a bit fucking rapey, isn't he? I mean, the first bit, and I message you guys, is when, they're guarding Padme. And she's like, switch the cameras off. Yeah, she stopped me watching. What? And I was like, what the fuck? What weird thing to say. But later in the movie, when they're having the romance scene and they're sat in the meadow, having a nice little romantic time of it, and she says, oh, you're not going to use your Jedi mind tricks on me. And he goes, oh, it doesn't work on that only works on the weak-minded. I'm like, no, Anakin, that's not the right answer. The right answer is I would not try that. Not, I've tried it and it doesn't work on the weak-minded. It only works with them. I was like, fucking hell, you are a bit of a, bit of a wrong un, aren't you? So yeah, sorry, I had to bring that up because I thought it was incredibly rapey. I don't know whether that was intended, but definitely how I watched it this time.
We'll delve straight into Anakin, but I will say with this film, my fond memories was because I had this on VHS tape, and it was one of the last films I think I ever bought on VHS, because I think it was around the time, it's 2002, 2003, so it was when DVDs were, I think coming in a bit. And as VHS strikes back, 2005 I think is when, was it DVD sales overtook
That's
VHS
right,
sales?
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm a true fan, I know. But it's so with that, I had that on VHS. I had Phantom Menace on VHS, and then the special editions of Star Wars: The Original Trilogy on VHS. And these aren't my original ones from that time. I got rid of them for some bizarre reason, or my mum probably did. And then my friend Tom bought me these, which was very nice for a birthday a couple of years ago. So I've got them. But the film itself, so Revenge of the Sith was, I think, the first film I ever had on DVD. It was that, and I think Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets were my two kind of firsts. And
very similar.
In certain ways, but I love them both. But with Attack of the Clones, I rewatched this film more than any other film that exists, apart from maybe Shaun of the Dead a few years later. Like, I think Shaun of the Dead, I could almost, if you put it on, I can just say every word every person's going to say. And I think with Attack of the Clones, I can pretty much do that. I think if I now had to try and, I'm not going to, but just start the film, I could do a pretty good job, apart from a few boring scenes. So I used to skip through the Anakin Padmé stuff. So there were parts by the end of the tape's life, as you know, maybe the young'uns listening to this may not be aware of this, but with VHS tapes, because it was analog, if you fast forwarded or paused at a certain point frequently enough, it would essentially kind of burn the reel in the tape. And so there'd be points where if you fast forward, like if people filmed stuff off TV and there was like adverts and things, then you would notice if you watch the film quite frequently, there's points where it would shake a little bit and a little bit more staticky stuff would come up at certain points where people would be fast forwarding or rewinding or whatever. So with that, around the Anakin Padmé stuff, there was always a fast forward, like, because it was, to me as a kid, I was like, this is boring, love stuff. And yeah, he's awkward, whatever. But I was a child. I was like, he's just an awkward, weird guy, whatever. I don't care about that. And them running in the meadows and hugging and laughing and Blair, I don't care. But the Obi-Wan stuff, I was like, my boy, Obi-Wan being cool, inspecting stuff, basically doing everything himself completely. And then, oh my God, Christopher Lee's in this film. And then, holy shit, we get to see Yoda fight like an absolute fucking madman. I was like, this is incredible in every way. And then it ends. And then I watched it. And I've seen it so many goddamn times, as I've said. But when I watch it now, I do enjoy it. But I feel like both Phantom Menace and this are probably the worst Star Wars films. I think Rise of Skywalker, the writing is quite bad in the sense of the plot, but the dialogue isn't the worst. Whereas the dialogue in these two films, especially this one, is not good for Anakin and Padmé. It's just not. And even Megan says Obi-Wan in this is Ewan McGregor. She says can act. He's a good actor. He's good in the first film. He's good in Revenge of the Sith. Obi-Wan's great. She says he is not good in this film, which we'll delve into, I'm sure. But because Megan isn't here, because she had late evening with parents' evening stuff, recently had a wisdom tooth out, she was like, I kind of want to be in it, but I'm also really tired. And I was like, in the Clone Wars one, you can give some thoughts, but they're the kind of things she'd want to say. But Anakin, I found he was, as I get older and I watch it, I understand he needs creepy, 100%. He says, I think, she didn't like me watching her while she was sleeping or something along those lines. And you're like, okay. And this is the start of the film, and he's like, you're as beautiful as I remember in my dreams. And it's like, okay, dude, back off. And it's like, I know that you're meant to be this kind of repressed, haughty teenager. Basically, he's 19, and he grew up enough to be that kind of age where I think he was 10 in Phantom Menace, where that's the age you start noticing things a little bit. I don't think you necessarily grow into a sexual being at that point, but that's like preteen, you know, that's where you start on your kind of puberty kind of goes around for guys a little bit later than that. So I think that because he had that, when it came to the puberty stuff, he wasn't repressed enough like the young Jedi are, and so he was having these weird feelings and stuff that he was never told about or explained. And then he's talking to this person who's the only connection to him not being a Jedi, and this celibate monk, you know, not an aphrodisiac in any way, the Jedi, at all, apart from their very phallic weapons. Aside from that, nothing. So it's like, him being like that, it's so awkward and odd. And they're the parts that are the worst part of the film for me, is that Phantom Menace is just every time Jar Jar opens his mouth. But other than that, apart from a few boring conversations about trade and stuff, it's not really got that many issues in the grand scheme of things. But whereas Attack of the Clones, you've got a huge chunk of the middle of the film is between Obi-Wan interacting with almost pure CGI while being a detective, which is cool, but not that Star Wars-y, to be honest. And then on the other side, you've got Anakin and Padmé having really boring dialogue, which no one cares about, that also everyone knows the end of, because Padmé's not around. They mention the mum's not around in the original trilogy, and we know Darth Vader. So it's this weird thing where, until they get to Tatooine, you're just watching these people badly act in these CGI fields and things, and you're like, what is this? There's no chemistry here whatsoever. So Anakin, not good. And I'm a proponent. I agree. I put my hands up and accept that.
I think the problem is he tries to justify it several times. Like when she says, you know, but the Jedi aren't meant to have partners. Something along that lines. It says, no, but we're meant to love, and this is love. And it's like he's trying to justify it to her, but justify it to himself as well. Of, you know, it's all right me to feel this way and do this because, you know, it's for the greater good. You know, and I think that's a problem when he starts trying to justify how he's been. He starts getting to the point where, hang on a minute, this is a point where maybe someone else should have said to you, I don't know, Anakin, step back a bit, you know, just calm down because you're going too far. But
I think Obi-Wan did that quite a lot, and that was part of the issue. He scolds him in front of Padmé, and he's like Anakin's trying to give suggestions. We'll find him, Padmé, don't worry. And everyone's like, quite me, young Padawan, that kind of thing. And it's just like, they have like a weird, almost argument in front of Padmé, and he's like, you'll know your place. It's like, so I think that's part of the issue, is that there's this, I mean, the theme of Duel of Fates, according to Filoni, spoke to George Lucas and stuff, is the Sith won because Maul killed Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon would be the ultimate father figure and mentor for Anakin, whereas Obi-Wan was more of a brother. He says in Revenge of the Sith, you know, for all the poor dialogue decisions George Lucas chose in the prequels, there are themes across that are quite clever, and he's like, you're a brother to me, you know, and he didn't need a brother.
He thinks of him as a father, and
he says that, yeah.
And Obi-Wan acts a bit more like Qui-Gon in this, I would say, a bit more kind of, this is how we have to do things. Whereas I have seen Revenge of the Sith a few times, so when we go into that, I have seen it a few times. I think there he's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more kind of, we've got to get stuff done. Whereas in this, he seems to. He knows he's taken on this mantle of being, you know, the Jedi Master now. So he's trying to live up to that way. And then maybe not having that feeling, not showing that love to Anakin in a way. That's why Anakin kind of went, I mean, it's no excuse, but that's why Anakin kind of went off in this way. And then he had no outlet. He had no one to really talk to. And, you know, I mean, you know, you could, I have a sister I don't have a brother, but you know, I could go and talk to my sister about certain stuff when I was younger. I wouldn't probably go to my mum and dad and talk to them, and maybe that's why there was that friction between them, because all of a sudden Obi-Wan's gone from kind of being, you know, on the same line, because they say that, you know, he says, you know, we're about the same power. If anything, I'm probably better than what Obi-Wan is. You know, he's not even my equal. Yeah, he's in charge of me, and there's always that kind of
discourse,
yeah, between them both.
Well, I want to ask with Dave. So, Dave, obviously, you with Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan, obviously, where you've seen the Clone Wars, it kind of bridges the gap between this film and Revenge of the Sith. So, if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts on Obi-Wan and Anakin, and any other kind of parts of Anakin you want to discuss.
Yeah, I think this Obi-Wan is different. I know it's 10 years on, but I think you're seeing an attempt to bridge to the Alec Guinness Obi-Wan, you know, a much more parental. It's not a brotherly thing. It's much more of a parental type relationship. But I think everyone's a bit of a dick to Anakin. It's not just Obi-Wan. You know, let's talk about grooming Padme. So, you know, she sees him as a child. Right? She even says, "Oh, don't worry, he's not a Jedi. He's just a Padawan learner." You know, like 20 minutes later, they're in bed. So it just is. It's a bit weird, and like everyone is just having a bit of a go at him. So, yeah, I think the relationship was. It was weird, right? Because from the original trilogy, you're expecting this real matey, people of the same age type relationship, and so I remember going back, you know, those first few times of watching it and thinking, this just feels odd because you've got this father figure type relationship, and this isn't really what I was expecting. So I still have that bias now, where it jar jars with me a little bit, you know. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what the sequels have, isn't it? That's interesting, because you've got Rey, Finn, and Poe, who are the main three. Whereas I've never thought of that. You're right. Whereas in the prequels, it's such a shift from conventional Star Wars as the original. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was curious for you that I think you've probably already answered a question I had coming into this, which was, liking this movie so much, I was wondering, is it because of the Clone Wars? Because for me, I think I've enjoyed it. I'm going to rip it to pieces, by the way, but I kind of enjoy it. But I think it's more because of the architecture of it, I think, works quite well. And it lays down some breadcrumbs which are picked up on in Clone Wars later. And it's just these little nuggets that pop up in between everything else. But I wondered if that's what made you like this movie so much. But it sounds like you've always kind of liked this one.
Yeah, I've always adored this movie. This was my favourite Star Wars movie for a long time. And when I first watched Revenge of the Sith, I didn't actually like it very much. When I came out of the cinema, it took me a rewatch or two, and I was like, oh no, this is phenomenal. With the Clone Wars, the way I describe Attack of the Clones, I think it's like a really nice vase that you've dropped, and it's not completely smashed, so you haven't chucked it away, but you put it back up, and there's a big old chip in it, and then a crack going down the side. And I feel like what Clone Wars does is Clone Wars makes a vase that it should have been, and then with extra pieces left over, it fixes the original vase almost, fills in the gaps. So you've now got these two things, one that's near perfect, which is Clone Wars. It's not, but it's very polished in a lot of ways. It's very thought out. You know, there's not, apart from parts in season 1 of the movie, there's not really any major flaws in it, especially not dialogue or storytelling wise. And then it makes Attack of the Clones better. But I've always loved Attack of the Clones completely. And then I watched the Clone Wars movie at the cinema. I've still got the ticket stub somewhere. And I couldn't stand it. I was like, I'm not into this. Don't like it. Don't like Anakin having an apprentice. It doesn't feel like it fits. The whole animation style is not pleasant to look at, and it's too silly. And so I never bothered with the series. I only watched Clone Wars about nearly 10 years ago. So during my lunch breaks at work, I used to just watch an episode or two every lunch break, and I was like, this is pretty good. And then I was like, I'll give Rebels a go, like properly. And then it kind of went from there. I was like, this is amazing. I need to go back and properly watch Clone Wars, giving it my full attention rather than kind of half watching it on my phone and doing other stuff, you know. And so it kind of went from there. And then obviously Series 7 of the Clone Wars came out and added. So I think it's almost like, I love Attack of the Clones unashamedly. It's a flawed movie, but I love it. And I think the Clone Wars has almost just kind of given me more justification. Now it's more acceptable to like Attack of the Clones because of Clone Wars and because of those reasons. And I think that Attack of the Clones and most of the prequel trilogy, to be honest, Revenge of the Sith is the most complete, but Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones really need some editing and really need certain elements flushed out more and explained more. Like the rule of two Sith thing that's literally just like a comment once, and it's basically never mentioned really again, not even mentioned. And you're like, what is, like, it kind of is in Revenge of the Sith when he gets a new apprentice and stuff, but it's like, it's so in the background somewhere. And then other things are just hyper focused, and it's like they needed to shave things off, tweak this bit. There's a really good foundational story here. Attack of the Clones is one of those films where if you squint at it, it's it's a masterpiece. But as soon as you actually really focus on certain parts, you really see the flaws in it. And I think because I saw it as a kid, like, not to age everyone here, I'm sorry, but I was 8 when I saw this. So I wasn't even as old as Anakin was in Phantom Menace when I first saw Attack of the Clones. So I watched that film, and you know what kids are like under the age of like 12, even maybe beyond that. They're like, I like this thing. I'm going to watch it 5 times every day for for a bizarre reason for a period of time, and it's going to become a core part of my personality. And that's basically what happened with Attack of the Clones. So yeah, Clone Wars is something where, because of it, the end of this especially is really just, if the end of this is the best part by far. And really, when you hone in on that, the Clone Wars goes, everything you like about Attack of the Clones, we're essentially going to expand on and improve on and make better and lead into almost everything you liked in Revenge of the Sith, especially with some of the final seasons. And we're going to mesh it together and bring out what was this fantastic foundation with a not the best execution. We're going to bring that out and actually put something together where, if George Lucas and another team had helped him take the time to make as much effort with the Clone Wars as he did with the prequels would not be held in the same regard, if you kind of know what I'm saying there. But I've just spoken a lot, and I've spoken about Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, hundreds of times across loads of podcasts. So let's pass the baton back. Maff, with this film then, so you didn't enjoy it as much. So compared to Phantom Menace, did you prefer this more? Did you prefer Phantom Menace? And what were, aside from the big Geonosis battle, like, what did you also think about other elements of this film with Obi-Wan, with some of the Jedi stuff? Like, how did you feel about it?
I think the problem is it's flawed. In maybe you can answer this, right? You say about the Sith, there can only be 2. I've never understood this, right? They talk about, you know, Anakin was there to bring balance to the Force, yeah? There's a shitload of Jedi Masters and Padawans. There's loads of them, but there can only be 2 Siths. How is that balanced? How can that be balanced when there's only 2 bad guys and there's a shitload of good guys? And how shit they are, the fact that, you know, that, oh, the Sith is watching us and he knows our weakness. And he's walking around you and you're talking to him all the time and you can't pick that up in the Force. You know, I get it. There's that line there that the Sith have realized that we're blind to see them and that. So the kind of, you know, that's the way they kind of try to get around it so that, you know, there's all these Jedis and then never notice the fact that the Sith's right under the nose. But at the same point, how can there be balance in the Force when there's only two of them against so many?
Yeah, well, I'll say in brief. So essentially, the prophecy, it's in the Master and Apprentice book by Claudia Gray. It's fantastic. They've got other prophecies in there as well. In short, what it's part of it is to do with what the Jedi perceive as balance. The Jedi perceive balance as all light side, no dark side, which isn't true equilibrium. But the weight of the dark side is so heavy that it's, when there's actual equilibrium, it's kind of, oh, there's only two, but they're so bad almost that the amount of this Jedi, you know, kind of in that way. But the thing is that the balance isn't necessarily before Anakin. It's Anakin brings balance. And what does Anakin do? Anakin actually, in Revenge of the Sith, he kills, you know, a huge amount of the Jedi, and him and Palpatine exterminate the Jedi. And by the time of the original trilogy, there's Yoda, there's Obi-Wan, and there's a few maybe scattered around, but not really any true facing up to evil Jedi. But there's about two-ish active ones, let's argue. And then Luke takes to the forefront, Obi-Wan dies, so does Yoda and things. And so eventually, with Luke and Vader kills Palps and then dies, and then it's just Luke left. So there's various interpretations of at what point the balance was brought. Was it when all the Jedi were exterminated and there's only a same amount of Jedi or similar in power to the amount of Sith there were? Was it when he kills Palpatine and then there's basically almost no Jedi left and no Sith? You know, when is this? It's a very good question. And this is actually something that gets pondered by, there's whole podcasts just talking about the balance of the Force. Even Yoda says it may have been misread in Revenge of the Sith. You know, the Jedi perceive it as he eradicates the Sith. The Sith perceive it as he brings us back. And the answer is kind of somewhere in between. And I kind of view the Order 66 thing is the Jedi misinterpreted it. But that concept, there's a certain arc in the Clone Wars, I'll call it the Mortis arc, that hyper focuses on the prophecy of the Force. And it doesn't necessarily answer your question, but it does bring a lot of interesting context to what that kind of means.
Yeah. Because it seems like, skipping forward a bit, it seems like the Jedi have this kind of get out of, oh, I'm a Jedi, so I'm all right. Mace Windu chops Django's head off. And it's like, oh, I've just done that. No problem. No problem. No worry about him going to the dark side or anything like that, or being a Sith. You know, and it seems to be fine for when Jedis do that, but you know, it's just
hypocritical.
Yeah, very much. And the thing is, how can you be this, you know, this guardian of light, this Jedi, without having a bit of dark side? You know, that's one of the things I really enjoyed in Rebels, the fact that Ezra kind of walked the fine line between both and realized that he had to use a bit of the dark side to be able to kind of do good. And they seem so hypocritical of the fact that they kind of say, oh, you can't do anything like that. How the hell are you going to get anything done? Because, you know, your hands are always going to be tied unless it suits you.
Well, Dave, I didn't know if you want to speak a little bit, because obviously Mace Windu is in the Clone Wars, about the hypocrisy of Mace Windu in some degree.
Yeah, he's a fucking fascist, isn't he? Really. I mean, I don't want to get political. It's really hard not to right now, because the world, UK in particular right now, is bonkers, isn't it? And you've got like free speech warriors demanding things be banned and stuff. And it's just dripping with hypocrisy. And what I'd say is that I think all of the things I said about Phantom Menace, I think I would say about this as well. That there is a great film in there somewhere, you know, with a bit better direction, cut down to 2 hours or less. I think you could have made a much, much better movie. Better acting and all that stuff as well would help. But I still think, you know, there's something good in there. But yeah, I think the clever thing that is there in the architecture are the political themes and the hypocrisy and the politics. Those are the clever things, but they're also abstract, you know, and if you think why did Star Wars catch fire initially, going back to 77 and then, through the early 80s with the rest of the trilogy, it's because it was super simple. It was really easy. The goodies are over here, the baddies are over here. It was boiled down to be so easy. Whereas you've got this kind of, Palpatine basically being a warmonger, pulling the strings behind the scenes, playing both sides, playing everyone against each other, but playing to the crowd, rallying people up using hate speech and stuff like that. So there's some really, really clever stuff in there. But it is, you mentioned it before, Mike, it's the execution of it that's off. But yeah, I do appreciate the architecture of this movie more so than the acting, the script in the dialogue, the delivery, some of the CGI. It's still, I can't not talk about the pair. What winds me up about the pair more? I mean, from the moment I saw it that first time, just the thought of it was just weird. But I was watching this and I'm like, you literally cut off the bottom part of the pear. Like, the worst part of the pear, you're going to give that to her. Just, of all the silly things, it still irritates me for some reason.
And he took it off her. She had it ready to go. I'm going to have some of this. He's like, nope, I'm going to bring it over here, cut it, and give it back to you, the worst bit.
I'm going to give you the core. So, but I just feel like most of that really clever political stuff is probably missed on most people. The only people who possibly get it, well, some people might get it. People who've watched Clone Wars probably definitely get it. What's really going on there. But I just think again, you've got this disconnect between these really adult, thought-provoking themes and, this silliness. And Jar Jar was dialed right down, wasn't he? I was looking at some of the trivia before. I didn't realize, but Lucas, in retaliation, I guess, for the response Jar Jar got, the secret kind of internal project name for this was Jar Jar's Big Adventure. That was the working title for this movie. So if there were any leaks, people would have gone nuts, But yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but I just think, again, as with Phantom Menace, it just has that complete different sides to it. The really thought-provoking stuff and the really quite childish, silly stuff.
They can do that. Well, I mean, if you get the right writing, they can do the political side really well. Look at Andor. Andor is probably one of the best Star Wars things out there.
100%.
And that. And it was a bit like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, I never would have thought I'd have been really interested in the politics side, and I really was. And all the same thing. You love the bits with the Mon Mothma when she's talking to the Jedi, to the Council and the Senate and things like that. You actually enjoy and you want to see it. Action's fine and all the rest of it, but you actually want to see them battling in that way with the words. Rightly or wrongly, Palpatine's brilliant, really, because he's 10 steps ahead of everybody, of planning things and plotting things. As, if this happened, well, I suppose I'll have to be in charge then, and things like that.
I love the Republic.
He's so good at it, and them bits are fun to watch, and they're not the big action things. They're because it's a lot more. That's the point where you think he's thought about this and that, and there's something there. Unfortunately, then you kind of lose it by having this. Let's kind of mash this love story together and kind of bad way of saying this in a way, force it on everybody else. A bit like Anakin was trying to do. There's certain parts of Star Wars I wish they would just kind of let it go. And it's like C-3PO again. Let's R2 fine. I can deal with R2 in there because it kind of fits. It kind of works. But the C-3PO again, it's like I get it. We know C-3PO, but you don't need to kind of push him into it. Oh, I'm just going to appear on the ship now and just come with you. And oh, I'm now going to be part of one of the battle droids.
He is the worst in the film trilogies. 3PO is the worst in the prequels. I would controversially say 3PO is the best in the sequels because I think he's so funny in the Phantom Menace, the Force Awakens. He is Rise of Skywalker, one of my least favorite of the Star Wars films. Best C-3POs in Rise of Skywalker. Every word that comes out of his mouth I think is hilarious and I love it. And in the prequels they're like, let's just kind of put him here and kind of waste him. And you're like, what? Why have you made Anakin kind of make him? What does that achieve? Well, everything's all connected. Everything's all connected anyway. It's just a protocol droid. R2 was just a random droid. Obi-Wan didn't build him. He just saved everyone. Why couldn't 3PO be someone that R2 saved from like a Jawa thing? He gets taken by the Jawas at one point. He saves 3PO. That would be a nice little clever, ironic twist on the original trilogy. But no, they're like, oh, Anakin made him. And then what's he going to do? In the second one, let's just have him fall about and CGI around this CGI droid factory. And you're like, is this humor? Is this funny? Is this comedy? When I was 8, I was like, this is just kind of weird and unnecessary and a kind of waste of time.
It was weird. It was almost like it was I think a lot of this was almost to sell the services. You've got to make the movie, but also you've got, what is it, Skywalker Studios, or what was the Lighthouse?
Yeah,
Skywalker Ranch.
There's Skywalker Ranch, the place. There's Lucasfilm does it, but there's LFT, I think it is.
It's them. Is it just for them to sell their own services? Is it just a tech demo? Because that whole game sequence, it looked like it should just be on a PlayStation 2 game or something like that. But the thing with 3PO, I mean, I don't know if you ever watched. Do you guys ever see the cartoon droids?
Yeah,
he blinks and it's really unnerving.
Yeah, I just like, what is the point of that? I think Lucas loves these droids way more. I mean, you kind of love them in their role as sidekicks, but they don't have to be in everything. But I was watching it this time and I'm thinking, how the fuck does Uncle Owen not recognize C-3PO in New Hope? He's right there. And you can say C-3PO could have had his mind wiped or something like that, but Uncle Owen is right there.
It's been like 23 years, I think, and that's it. And they haven't had any protocol droid since.
Yeah.
I get the fact that there were a lot of them type of droids, but surely when he speaks and he starts talking, you kind of go, hang on a minute, I know you.
Yeah.
Are you such and such? Oh, yeah, I am. All right, here you come then. Well, again, we're picking up flaws.
I mean, this film is very flawed. So I was just trying to look up to see if I could find the name of, because people, I'm atrocious. So people know I'm terrible at out of universe Star Wars trivia. Like, as people saw in the Discord, like I don't
this
know.
will be fun.
I mean, in universe,
don't try and get your excuses in yet.
No, I'm clarifying. You saw on Discord. You saw that the trivia stuff. I have
that were hard.
Out of universe, I have no real interest in that regard. Like, there's loads of Star Wars documentaries and books and stuff, and I'm sure they're all fun, but like for me, I like being fully immersed in the universe, like a VR headset on of it. And it was the same when I used to be really into Doctor Who. I watched Doctor Who Confidential a couple of times behind the scenes, and once I could see how they made the alien prosthesis on their face, I was like, oh, but now when I look at the alien, I see a person with latex on their face painted, not the actual thing. So for certain things, I don't always pay attention to that stuff behind the scenes. So I'm sorry that I can't remember the name of the Lucasfilm Light thingamabob. But I wanted to ask about Mace Windu, because Maff mentioned it earlier, and the hypocrisy of it. And there's some very clever subtext, and it comes to fruition in Revenge of the Sith. But Mace Windu is a hypocrite, as Dave said. And the thing is that in Revenge of the Sith, it's shown a lot more. But, Anakin's got Dooku there, ready to kill him, and he's like, what do I do? And Palpatine says, do it. And then he does, and he kills him. Then when the roles are reversed, when Mace Windu has a chance to kill someone who they also can clearly see as a Sith and a baddie, he's like, Anakin's like, no, we can't kill him. It's not the Jedi way. This is the thing I'm clinging on to because everything around me is broken. The Clone Wars has ravaged me, has destroyed my hope in anything. I'm like falling apart. The only thing keeping me together is basically Padme, and now I'm having visions of these horrible things going on with her. She and the Jedi are my last things. And then Yoda's the Grand Master, and then Mace Windu is like the co-Grand Master. There's 2 words for it, but they're basically even level. But it's like, because Yoda's so old, when he's Grand Master, they have another Grand Master to be like, Yoda can go off and do his own thing for a while. Here's the other Grand Master, just because Yoda wants to do his own thing. And it's like, he's saying, no, I'm just going to literally kill the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic in cold blood because of a political thing, because of a political ideology difference. And Anakin's like, but that's what he told me to do, except the difference between the two of you is that you're telling me you've basically been a dick to me my entire life and have never trusted me, and this guy's saying I can save your wife. And so that moment when Anakin sees it, again, it's not directed in the best way to make that so clear. When you look into it, you're like, that's a really clever thing. And Mace Windu the whole time and throughout the Clone Wars, he never trusts Anakin at all. And there's a book called Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade that's phenomenal. And that's about a Jedi who becomes an Inquisitor. And she is alive. She's at the Battle of Geonosis. You can't see her in the film, but she's there as a Padawan, and she loses her master there. That's very, very early in the book. And then she obviously becomes Inquisitor. The name of the book is Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade. And you see, she's at the knighting ceremony that Anakin is at to become a Jedi, and she can feel the mistrust off Mace, not only onto Anakin, but onto her. She never got on with Mace Windu. Mace Windu was getting people to spy on her and all these kind of other things. She becomes an Inquisitor. So there's all these people that Mace Windu himself, very cool character, don't get me wrong, and Samuel Jackson was great as him, but like there's so many people in Star Wars that Mace Windu, because he was so dogmatic and so like, no, you can't do this thing, no, you can't do that, all the time, and Yoda's a bit more sympathetic and understanding, it pushes people away. And Megan hates Mace Windu. She says she blames him under Palpatine as the main reason Anakin fell. And I think in this film you get little breadcrumbs of it again. But one of my favourite scenes in all of Star Wars, to be honest, is when Anakin's mum dies. I think, apart from her death, which is a bit too droppy, I think that the scene is actually directed pretty well, and it does make me feel something. And when Anakin does kill the Tusken Raiders, when I was younger, it didn't hit me that much. But seeing it as an adult, I'm like, this is, especially after watching things like Book of Boba Fett and Mando, you're like, this is very brutal. They were like, let's get a guy killing children, but we can't really show it that much, so let's make them basically monsters, air quotes. And then in Revenge of the Sith, like that, let's just almost literally show him killing children. And you're like, I know, as Dave said, he's Space Hitler, but it's like, that scene I really enjoy. So I know we've spoken about Anakin as romance and that kind of stuff, but a lot of this film is showing the turning point of Anakin from being a kid to him becoming Darth Vader. This is like the middle stepping stone. So Dave, I want to ask you first, what do you think about Anakin in this? And then how does that, obviously with no spoilers, how does that connect with the Clone Wars? Like watching Anakin himself change. How did you find that in the film itself and then also post-Clone Wars?
I think, again, the architecture, I like the idea that, it's the attachment. I mean, you're trying to think how could you like just be completely detached from your mum, like having to leave your mum and then finding out she's in danger and then dies in your arms. What, you're just supposed to, would Mace Windu just whistle off into the distance? I don't think so. So, but you can see he's wrestling with it, and he'll say to Padme a few times, I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to do this. And he's constantly fighting with himself over that. And I think I can embrace that and like the idea of it. And like I say, I think watching the Clone Wars, that, as you said, I like the analogy, it fills in the cracks in the vase, the CGI vase. But oh my God, I'm glad Hayden Christensen is getting love now and everything, but you go back and watch this and you think, he really was a terrible actor.
He needs a lot of direction. I think in Revenge of the Sith he's a lot better, but in this film there is a lot that need to work.
Yeah.
Some of the it's like when he does say to Padman about it's just basically slaughtered the entire Tusken Raiders there.
Not just the men.
the women,
the children. And the children.
And she turns around and says, it's okay to be angry. That is to be human. And she seems fine with it, which it's like, he's just told you what he's done and you're all right with him. You're giving him an excuse. But at the same point, to kind of counteract that, the Jedi kind of told him, well, you shouldn't feel anything. But, as us now, we realise that it's good that people talk about the feelings and talk about stuff. And this is where the Jedi went wrong, that they kind of said, no, just shut it off. Just ignore it. Bury it deep underground, and we don't have to deal with it. No wonder he turns to the dark side. And that, because he's got his mum's just died. He got taken away. He's losing all these things. And that is bound to push him over. And that, Padmé does try to kind of help him there. I mean, I do feel it's a bit like, oh, it's all right, you just slaughtered all them people. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Come on, let's have kids to the cuddle.
What I love, though, is flash back to the Jedi Council, who spend most of the movie just sat there chatting. And Yoda's like, in great pain, Skywalker is. Mace Windu's like, yeah, should we grab a coffee? We'll just not do anything about it at all or address it in any way. Should we have a chat to him about it? Nah, it's all right. Be fine, Skywalker will. So they just never talk about it, but there's no need for that flashback. It's just
that's
ridiculous.
The thing. Maybe if they had sat down and just talked to him about stuff and just tried to explain him and give him some kind of counselling, maybe he wouldn't have turned. Well, quite jarring. But that's where their problems are. It's like, like what the 1960s man used to be. You can't show emotion, and that you've just got to be this person who goes to work and does stuff and just comes home and you don't show any form of emotion, and that. Whereas if they'd have kind of addressed that, things probably wouldn't have gone tits up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's
basically
what
the Mormons, aren't they? If you've watched Book of Mormon,
yeah,
they need to turn it off.
Like a light switch.
Yeah.
I mean, the High Republic is exploring that idea of what they were like when they used to talk about the dark side, and they used to have basically counseling as a person who does use the dark side, and they're a Jedi, and then they basically go to this nice planet with like waves, and they do this like training and breathing exercises, learning that the Force is like the ocean, all kinds of cool stuff, and then horrible stuff happens, like disasters occur, and then the Jedi have to start these codes of like these emergency things, like no Jedi going out by yourself, always with two, no doing this, no doing that, and you start to see the dogmatic side bleeding in from that, and then becoming more dogmatic and shielded. But again, in this film, there's ample time and capacity to really hone in on this whole, like, how many films have we seen where you have a religious organization or a cult or an overbearing family and they repress a child or a person, and they do it without showing overt violent or sexual abuse. They do it verbally, they do a lot of gaslighting, that kind of thing. That is shown multiple times before this film came out and since. So all they would need really is to angle that more and be like, right, Obi-Wan's trying his best, but there's a system that's clearly failing and he's turning a blind eye to it. Mace Windu's fully in it. Yoda's basically too old to really change things enough, and Mace Windu's kind of almost dragging the council, and Yoda's kind of unable to stop him. And Anakin's caught in the middle of this storm of this dogmatic power struggle between the Republic and the Jedi, which is actually causing the fall of the Jedi. If you just tweak the perspective a little bit and put that perspective in with the kind of hone in on the gaslighting, hone in on these conversations where have it Anakin asking them for help and saying, I'm getting all these feelings and emotions, I can't control them, and them shutting him down. They do it a smidge in Revenge of the Sith, where he goes to Yoda and says, I'm worried about losing someone, and Yoda goes, you just have to learn to let go. And it's like, thanks, how you cure your depression, don't be sad. It's like, it doesn't work like that. But Yoda's a 900-year-old person who's been in the Jedi for like 800 years or something mad, so it's like, if they honed in on that perspective, again, you could have such a deep, interesting movie with so much social commentary on not only religion and politics, but also the constricting nature of certain religious and just generally restrictive organizations. You could have all this in there in the film, with all the big parts of this film being the same. You could have like a borderline abusive relationship forming between Anakin and Padme, and that start, and that could be the catalyst, and that could show Vader in a certain way. There's lots of different things. I don't want to see Padme abused, because Padme is one of the coolest characters in the prequels in the Clone Wars. You get a bit of it in Phantom Menace. You get a bit of it in Attack of the Clones, when she's basically never with Anakin. At the end, when she's like in the Geonosis thing, she's kicking ass, taking names. As soon as she's away from Anakin, she's in an actual war. She does better than any of them. She's like more professional than Anakin. And in Revenge of the Sith, it's like, she's pregnant. That's her personality. She is pregnant. It's like, okay, thank you. So there are these faults and these flaws. But I want to hone in a little bit on, we'll speak a little bit about Padme, and then the end, and then Maff's got a fun little quiz for us, which are going to prove how little I actually know about Star Wars, and I'm just a fraud.
Don't build it up too much.
But let's do Padme and the end. So Padme, obviously, throughout this film, it's up and down because her interaction with Anakin, she wears this like quite tight-fitting, almost corset thing by the next of a fire next to this 19-year-old monk virgin who's clearly super into her after kissing and being like, no, we can't do anything. It's like, look at my cleavage. No, we can't do anything. It's like, okay, But again, I blame George Lucas for that, not as, the character itself or necessarily Natalie Portman. But then you get this other side to her that's a lot more Princess Leia-esque. You get the blast out in one hand, firing. She is so on it in Geonosis. And that's where I really think this whole film elevates. Granted, if you have to wait to the last hour of a film for it to be good when it's 2.5 hours, it's probably not the best film. You need to have decent pacing. And although I like the Obi-Wan Detective Kenobi kind of style stuff, I enjoy it. But it's a lot of him wandering around and not really doing much with not really many solutions. And then it's just this big open-ended question of, this kind of bad bounty hunter that Mace Windu killed. He's the clone army. Oh, he is. Yeah, we didn't know about this weird thing. Oh, and this Master Sifo Dias who died and never gets mentioned again, until the Clone Wars. It's all these things. And you're like, sorry, what is happening? Why is no one questioning this? What? And they're like, watch the next film to find out. And then you get to the next film 3 years later and they're like, we've not questioned anything. And then Order 66 happens. And you've got, again, the Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff is cool, but you could have done it better. So let's focus on my favourite parts, the Geonosis and Padme. So, Dave, you again. What do you think of Padme throughout the film? And then bleeding from that, kind of some of your thoughts towards the final act, as it were.
So Padme, I think, has a lot of potential to be a really kick-ass character. But I think Natalie Portman has zero chemistry at all with Hayden Christensen, so I'm not buying any of the love scenes whatsoever. Mm-hmm. The thing on Geonosis, so what I'd say about this as well, right? It's quite a long movie, but I think this would almost fit into a 10 episode season or something, because when you used to watch old like Star Trek and stuff like that, they'd have an episode and there was a theme around it. And then, you'd have a little arc and you could watch that episode in isolation, but there was something that links it to what came before and what's to come. And I think stuff like the Colosseum bit, just had that almost Star Trek feel. Like you just, for this episode, you're here in this, Roman sort of style world or something like that. And I think it was good to see Padme take names. I just wish they didn't, the fucking cat thing gives her a swipe and just manages to expose her belly. And she's like, ooh, that makes me look really sexy. Nice. Let's carry on fighting. So I just think again, that Jar Jar's with me, to be honest, because she's so kind of kick-ass, but then just so sexualized, and it doesn't fit. It's unnecessary.
It feels like he doesn't want a woman to kind of take center stage. He wants to show her enough so that some of the young girls will be like, "Oh, that's nice." But
you know what it feels like.
Back of it.
Well, what was those fucking magazines that you get like Guns and Ammo or something like that, where you get like a really sexy woman holding a massive fucking gun or something. You know what I mean? It's like it's someone who's dressed up in a kick-ass way, but the end goal is that they're a sexualized object.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel about it, really.
I think he was trying to be with like, Leia in the gold bikini. Obviously, Carrie Fisher obviously sexualized there. Did it work in the plot? Yeah. Was it necessary? Probably not. But then she kills.
But
Jabba.
legendary. Just to be a complete hypocrite, by the way.
Yeah, I know. But this is what I'm saying is like with that is like she kills Jabba, which is a badass move. But then she could have been wearing more clothing and the effect would have been the same. The slave girl would have been the same. Like there's other slave women who aren't as scantily clad as she is. So it's like, okay. Like, and I know I'm probably stepping on a lot of,
but that's been an issue though. Because it's like, I mean, I play D&D and that, that's an issue there that's, there's been for many years. It's like, the noble paladin knight, full plate armor, it looks like a giant tank coming towards you. And then the female version has got this kind of little bikini, just, I mean, it's not going to, it's to kind of, sexualize them so that, young lads are going to look at that and think, I'm going to go watch that. What about the story? Don't care. Can you see some boobs?
I think the difference for me, though, say the gold bikini, and that, quite frankly, has gifted us, many cosplay reenactments and stuff. You can get those. Someone's dressed up as this sexualized slave, a sex slave, if you like. But there's something about the fact that she's in a combat situation and gets swiped at, and then it just conveniently, in a very stylish way, takes away and exposes a midriff.
Yeah.
It's almost parody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the difference between just purely, someone having something that's scantily clad and having this weird,
for plot
shot in a million.
Like in the Padme thing, like she's in this white stuff and she gets the scratch on her back, which makes sense. Granted, with those wounds, she'd be bleeding a lot more, but whatever. She gets the big scratch on her back. You go, okay. And then as you say, when I watched that the last time I watched the film, even Megan and I, we were like, how? Like you watch the scene, it's the way the Nexus scratches her on her back could not have ripped the front off, and if it did, it'd have been like this weird flappy rag thing. It would have been one clean, perfectly circle cut all the way around. And you watch it like this, it doesn't actually, not only does it not make sense in the plot, and it doesn't serve the story at all. I think Leia, although it is obviously sexualizing her, it is meant to be, she's in this vulnerable situation by this vile, disgusting gangster, but she still takes control of the situation and gets out. Whereas with Padme, it was like, she's being badass in this outfit, but she needs to wear less for this scene, and there's no story reason why, so let's have her outfit scratched off. And it's like, the scratch on her back, that didn't stop her at all. She screams out like, across her spine, might I add, big wounds, and then she's just like, oh, I'm all right. And then it's never mentioned again.
Like she a paper cut, really?
Well, when she falls off that ship and rolls down the sand dune, I was thinking, that's going to get infected. Does it get mentioned? No. Is she okay? Yeah, she just gets up again and is fine. I'm like, what? So what was the point in the scratch? And that's the issue. And it's like, it's to add a little bit of dramatic tension, but we also know that she must be the parents of Luke and the mum of Luke and Leia. Yeah. So she can't die. So you remove the dramatic tension. You remove that it didn't add anything to the plot because the wounds never got mentioned again. So what's left? Having Natalie Portman not wear many clothes. And it's like, and that is unfortunately a part which is like, even when every time I watch it now, that's a bit that I'm like, this is. And
it's a shame because that bit where Anakin and Obi-Wan's having that kind of bit of conflict between each other. And there's like, well, Padman seems to be doing all right. And it's the bit where just showing good light, the fact that there's a situation going on. I need to react. I need to do what's right, for my people or for whatever it is. And she reacts and she goes about things. And it shows her in a good light, but then it is that thing of, but let's also just, show her off a little bit more as well. Just in case people don't like that, we'll show a bit of flesh. And it's a shame it could have been done. I think, again, it's 20 years old, this film, so just over 20 years old. We've come along. If you were to remake that now, them scenes wouldn't have played out quite the same, I don't think.
Think about Rey. She's not sexualized at all.
Yeah, exactly. She's just a badass. We don't have to kind of fluff her up or anything like that. She's just a badass, and you love her for being that person. Not because she's showing off a bit more skin than, the next person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is an interesting and unfortunate choice in that. But let's talk, before we get onto the questions, let's talk about, so the Geonosis and the finale.
Can I just ask?
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Right. They keep trying to assassinate Padme.
Yeah.
And they hire the assassin. They send the robot drone. It scans, and then it puts a hole in the window and sends them two little bug things through to kill her. Why not just shoot her then? Why not laser her or
That's
something
one of
like
the
that?
biggest plot holes in Star Wars, where it was Palpatine wanted Padmé murdered, but also Newt Gunray did, so he kind of got framed that kind of. So he got Jango Fett. He hired Dooku to do it, who hired Jango Fett to do it, who hired Zam Wesell to do it, who got a droid to do it, who sent these bug things that the name always escapes me to do it. And exactly as you say, Jango Fett managed to shoot a poison dart onto Zam Wesell's neck from like 2 buildings up when she was about to say his name.
Yeah.
But yet a sleeping woman, like they managed to have a whole droid fly up there. That could have been a bomb, which is possible, as we see in the Clone Wars. That could have literally had a blaster. It could have shot anything. It could have released 20 worm things. They weren't trying to assassinate her and make it subtle because they literally blew up her ship at the start of the movie. So subtlety is gone. So why not go full guns blazing? Why not crash a speeder into her room?
There is some real Austin Powers / James Bond convoluted attempted kills in this, aren't there? So, like you say, the thing where Django hires this other bounty hunter, the shape-shifting bounty hunter, it just boggles my mind. But early on, when Obi-Wan is holding on to the droid thing, and he's sort of flying along there, and he shoots the droid, so Obi-Wan drops down. I'm like, well, just fucking shoot Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Why are you shooting the droid so he falls to his
Why
death?
are you having the droid to come back to you
Shoot him
anyway?
in the face.
Have the droid just go into the side of a building or something like that. Don't
bizarre.
get the droid to come back to where you are to kind of expose yourself.
Yeah, so that's a very big plot hole. So there are many plot holes in this film. Again, it's one of this and Phantom Menace, I'd argue, again, are probably the 2 worst made Star Wars films, but I think they have 2 of the highest peaks, which personally Rise of Skywalker doesn't reach for me in that regard. But I love the Geonosis battle. I think, as you said, with Padmé getting herself out of the situation, Padmé is resourceful. That's her number one attribute. She's kind and she's resourceful. She's very switched on. Any situation she's in, she manages to get herself out of prior to childbirth. And in the Clone Wars, again, you get this whole side of her, which you get to see really more of the political intrigue, and both her in the Senate and her also out of the Senate being cool like she is at the end of this film. And then you get Obi-Wan and Anakin, because Padmé can't rely on force powers to get her out of the situation. She has to do it, not rely on jumping ridiculously high and force pushing and stuff. And I love seeing them all handle the creatures in different ways. She's resourceful. Obi-Wan, he basically immediately, he dodges because he's a very defensive fighter. The Acklay, the giant praying mantis thing, stabs the thing, he gets free. First thing he does, he's like, right, I need that thing to stab down and free myself. And he, step by step, gets himself out of the situation and systematically takes out the Acklay. He gets his lightsaber, cuts legs off, done. What Anakin does is the Reek, the rhino thing, runs, he jumps, and with brute force and dodging, he basically is then riding the Reek. He's very instinctual. And it shows how the 3 of them deal with different situations. And again, this for me shows that's a really clever thing to do from a storytelling perspective. It really clearly shows how each of the characters are, in their own way, how they approach different situations. But it's only really a moment. And you don't get this honed in, detail-orientated, or really that intensely detailed part of how these characters really are. You just get this snapshot thing that's quite cool, and unless you really look at it in an analytical way, you don't get the depth of it. And it's again with George Lucas, you could have really put more into this in certain ways or hyper focused on it, and you spent more time doing this other thing instead of this. But then the Jedi come in, and this is, I think, the most Jedi we get on screen at all. When the Jedi come down and Yoda's there and it's all, and I love that stuff. I love there being loads of Jedi. That's one of the things I love about the prequels. But in the Phantom Menace, there's loads of Jedi. Do you get to see them fight? No. You get Darth Maul, you get 2 Jedi at once against 1 Sith, but that's what you get. Whereas in this film, it's let's see loads of Jedi fighting CGI stuff, granted, but loads of them doing all these things. And I really enjoyed that bit. So, Maff, as you have the background showing that very scene, how did you feel watching this scene this time round? As a whole, the Geonosis kind of Colosseum-y stuff.
I did enjoy it. The bit where it's you've outnumbered. No, we're not. And that. And then Yeah, but again, it's typical bad guy thing. You've got them all surrounded, and it's like, let's stop shooting. Let's kind of, just kill them. Just kill them all because you've got them they're in a kill box, basically. Just blast the shit out of them all. Fair enough, Yoda comes in and saves the day with, the clone troopers. But before that, they could have wiped him out then. And it's that's the frustrating part of realistically, that's what would have happened. But obviously, it's a film; you can't do that because how do you explain the rest of the films? But it is cool to see them on screen, seeing them all fighting. It's what you were just saying there. It's like Anakin, the brute force against the Rhino type thing, whereas Obi-Wan's he's got to be a bit more strategic on how he deals with his, and that it's like the spirit animal that they're having to fight against.
That's a clever way of putting it.
And Padmé being cunning because she has to. She's not as big as strong as the rest of them, so she has to be cunning in how she deals with things. I'm still not quite sure why Anakin got on the back of the kind of
the Reap.
Yeah, no, he gets on the back of the car at first.
Oh, yeah, the carriage thing with Geonosis. Yeah,
Oh, I better say, Pat, but you're not doing anything. She's fine. Leave her to it. She's doing all right. You don't need to be there. But seeing it all on screen, seeing the big battle, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And then we go to the kind of confront Count Dooku.
We'll pause there. We'll pause there because that will be the next thing to into. Dave, so you with the Geonosis Colosseum, any thoughts?
I think I prefer it when the Jedi turn up more so than there's something about it. I hear your perspective on saying the different styles and how they handle the different creatures, but it kind of I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but
that's how I feel.
But the Rancor is one thing, and you've got Luke as one thing. So in terms of action, you can film, the different from your different camera shots, but it's almost as if we're fighting on, or we're focusing in on Obi-Wan now, and we'll see we're just nothing else exists in your peripheral vision or anything. You just focused on that in isolation, and then let's go and look at Anakin in isolation, and then let's have a look at Padmé in isolation. And you would think it should be this big chaotic mess, and not this pairing off of creature against one of our protagonists.
So again, it crossed over and dealt with each other's.
It just strikes me as odd, and it's so focused on those different battles. And I hear what you're saying about, the storytelling, show don't tell, which is weird because most of this movie is tell.
Yeah,
in terms of dialogue,
a lot of it.
But yeah, I like it when the Jedi show up. Of course, we've got to mention, haven't we, about the purple lightsaber? Legend has it. Samuel L. Jackson wanted to be able to pick himself out, and so Lucas said, he'd think about it. But it was only when they came back for reshoots that they he saw that he did have a purple lightsaber. Apparently, on the bottom had inscribed "bad motherfucker" as well, which I appreciated from the Pulp Fiction reference. But yeah, so I do think that is good. It is a bit of nonsense, isn't it? I mean, there were several times, not just shoot them all, not just menacingly march a little bit closer to them each time, and then till Yoda comes and asks them to form a perimeter. I mean, let's face it, Count Dooku could have just put a lightsaber straight through Obi-Wan when he was sort of in manacles earlier on, couldn't he? So that was good. I have to say, with the did you want to get onto the fight scenes with Count Dooku?
Yeah, I'll go to you, and then Maff can chime in whenever. Yeah,
honestly, feel like the worst lightsaber scenes in the whole Star Wars any trilogy. I just feel like it didn't really work for me. I mean, Christopher Lee's obviously an older chap. He's not going to be able to do what Ray Park did in the previous movie, but I just don't feel like it worked. And then it was such an obvious switch when you've got the stunt double and Jumping Bean Yoda. I don't think I needed to see Jumping Bean Yoda. I don't think it worked for me. And let's face it, everyone has the high ground over Yoda, don't they? So I still don't particularly like that, if I'm honest.
I think the fighting style for Count Dooku, if they'd have had him more as a fencer, so him parrying, not having to move as much because he's older, it would have. It's like when Yoda started flipping around and that, this 900-year-old. It's just, you kind of think it's cool in one sense, but he's just walked onto screen with a walking stick, looking like
he's got a bad back.
Yeah, looking like what I do first thing in the morning. And then all of a sudden, he's flipping around. Now, I've heard the argument that's the
got a claim on disability.
Well, yeah. I've heard people say that's the Force that allows him to be able to do that. Fine, okay, but it would have been better if it had been a bit more of a kind of a fencing kind of trading blows to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be this big almighty fight.
More like almost a New Hope.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, because the fact it is just two people just going at each other with a sword, with lightsabers. I think it would have been better. It doesn't have to be all these flips. I mean, Anakin is well known for his spin that he does with his, and they want to bring that in there. But not all fights have to be that way. All it takes is a really skilled, like a fencer. Once you start spinning, he just jabs and you're gone for. And I think it could have been choreographed a lot better. And again, Obi-Wan's meant to be this great defensive, and he's taken out very quickly, very easily.
100%. Both times, in this film and the next film.
Yeah.
Sith Lords are our speciality, he says in Revenge of the Sith. And on screen, you watched him get beat by Maul and win on a technicality, and then lose against Count Dooku, and then lose against Count Dooku again.
Yeah. He's not learning that point, is he? No, normally, that's the thing I've said before about Obi-Wan. He seems to learn and then adapt from it. And in this, he doesn't.
No.
And that he's just, I'll just lay on the floor. I'll I'll keep my head down. It's fine.
The different lightsaber styles of the original trilogy and the prequels are very apparent. And while I grew up with the prequels, I was just like, these are all lightsaber battles. So I think that's part of it. Because like the sequel trilogy, I think they do it a lot more even. And I'd say the Rey and Kylo lightsaber exchange in Force Awakens, and with Finn's bit in the start of it as well, that's some of my favourite lightsaber dueling in the whole of Star Wars. I think that is phenomenal.
I love the Baylan Skull and Ahsoka duel. The fact that Baylan is brute strength. He isn't fancy. He would just like, I'll hammer you down, I'll hammer you down, I'll hammer you. I like that. I really enjoy it because there were two different fighting styles. We do see in the end of Rebels with Maul and Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan changes his stance, and that they just seem to, in this, it just seems to be, let's flip the lightsabers around as much as we can, and it looks better, but it doesn't have to look better like that. It could look better if it's just more of a skill kind of trading of blows.
The choreography of Phantom Menace is so good with Maul, and then the choreography in Revenge of the Sith, for me, I think is fantastic, if a bit over the top at times, and a bit, there are parts of the Obi-Wan Anakin fight which are unrealistic, and they could have had jabs at each other, but for probably 80% of it, I think is really cool, and they had to work really hard to do that stuff. But it is in this film, it is a bit like Count Dooku just easily beats Anakin and Obi-Wan, and it's like Anakin just runs at him and he gets wiped out, and then Obi-Wan gets beaten, and then Anakin comes back, and then Yoda's doing these giant massive flips. And the problem is the Yoda fight is one of the best things about something like John Wick or The Raid is when you see this choreography and you see two really professional fighters, martial artists or stuntmen, doing something without many cuts. And you get to see, and that's why Revenge of the Sith works so well. When you watch Anakin, and even with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan, when Obi-Wan runs through that thing angrily at Darth Maul and he swipes him and it's up, down, up, down, up, down. That's filmed in real time. There's no cut there. That's literally happening. And you're so immersed in it. With Yoda, what it is it's either Christopher Lee or a stunt double essentially waving their lightsaber around, and then someone post has CGI'd in Yoda to wherever the lightsaber is. And it's like, as a child, you watch it, you go, this is really cool. Yoda's doing crazy stuff. But again, when you look at it with a more critical eye, it's like, this isn't very well choreographed because it's not really been thought out. It's almost like with comic writers when they say, oh yeah, just have 2 pages where this is how the fight starts and this is how the fight ends. Just do something in the middle. And in comics, that's fine. A lot of artists do incredible jobs there. But when you have it as the finale of a film and a character like Yoda, and you're like, why did you do this craziness? Why didn't you keep him to be slow and steady, but like perfectly defensive? Like everything Count Dooku throws at him, Yoda just deflects with ease, but is trying to talk him out. It's like, you are my apprentice. They mentioned that. Did they dig deeper into it? No, they're like, you're my apprentice. Yeah, but I'm stronger than you now. Okay, let's fight. And what would have been so interesting, which we get a bit more of in the animated stuff, is Yoda and Dooku having this real thing of Yoda trying to bring him back, almost doing what Luke was trying to do to Vader in Return of the Jedi, but failing. And then that adds to Yoda's exile, from Revenge of the Sith. He could have said, I couldn't bring back Dooku, I couldn't be Palpatine, but again, it's just not delved into. There's a breadcrumb of it. And then you're like, oh, let's just have Yoda zoom around fighting him. And I think that even visually what you could have done and what I would have done, I'd have had Yoda, stand there and kind of almost do an anime style power up almost, where he just focuses and he kind of crosses his legs and levitates a little bit and then kind of opens his eyes and he's a bit more like Rey does in The Force Awakens. Like that thing of him kind of channeling and trying to be calm and then being like one with the Force almost, and that's how he can move around quickly. Something like that. But you don't get that. You go, I'm going to put my walking stick down and kick your ass. And he doesn't. He does beat Dooku to a degree, and then Dooku runs away, and that's that. And again, I love it. I really enjoy it, but it's that kind of the two minds. It's like, here's my Star Wars watching brain, which I love. And then here's watching this film as an actual just film, not a Star Wars film, just a sci-fi film sequel. And that's where things start to fall apart. The lore's amazing and interesting because of all the content that came out of the lore, but a lot of it is like a non-starter. It's like Loki with the branching timelines. You've got this one main story, and then you've got about 50 things coming off of it that don't go anywhere, that doesn't get mentioned again, even in Revenge of the Sith. And then that's where Clone Wars kind of flourishes. It's almost like Clone Wars works so well because it's like a fungus growing in the plot holes of the prequels. And there's so much fertile soil for it that the Clone Wars is so amazing. She's like, the prequels make sense finally. Yeah, it only took 7 seasons of an animated show with like 20 odd episodes every season and 3 or 4 episodes explaining specific parts of it, which is one of the things.
At least it's something to look forward to. I mean, you see, Anakin being quite headstrong and charging into Dooku, I can see that because he's young, he's still learning. That makes sense. But yeah, I just think it's like they just wanted to show up a bit of pizzazz, and that we've just had it all in the arena. We'll show a bit more with these more skillful, fighters. But again, you're just showing it off a bit more of a flash of lights, and then Dooku's going to run away.
Yeah,
I think that'd have been okay if like Mace Windu would have squared up with Dooku or something. I don't need Yoda to. I know it gets mentioned, the Anakin, if he keeps up his sword play, he could match Master Yoda. But I think I'm okay with Yoda just being really, really powerful with the Force. And showing it in that way. And maybe it's through the meditation or, lifting things or whatever. But the absolute badassery, I mean, let's face it, I was taking the piss out of Mace Windu before, but when he drops into the Colosseum, I mean, what a badass, and that's Samuel L. Jackson's best moment in Star Wars, isn't it? I think that bit. But yeah, if he'd have gone up against Dooku, I think that'd have been a better thing. And I just think the Yoda flipping stuff, I just think it's comical when I look at it now.
Yeah, it is. it is annoying. Yeah, I think Mace Windu would have been a better choice there. And you could have even had Mace Windu, cut off his arm or something, and then Dooku's got like a fake arm for the next one. Like all these little parallels you could have done and would have been cool and show Mace Windu to be this like almost unstoppable force, but he's also the one who's holding the Jedi back in a lot of ways. Or with Yoda, one thing he could have done is in the High Republic comics, the miniseries called The Blade. Anyone who has the Marvel Unlimited, I'd recommend reading it. You don't have to have read any Star Wars content ever before, just this one Blade miniseries. It's just a few hundred years before the Skywalker saga. And there's this ridiculously powerful lightsaber duelist, and he does this ability that's quite rare and hard to do, where he can fight someone without even touching his lightsaber. Where so he'll be dueling with you, and then he'll jump behind you, and then the lightsaber will still be fighting you, and he pulls out a second lightsaber. And he does this against a Jedi Master at one point, and the Jedi Master's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to train against you, I was top of my class." And then the Blade, who's called Porter Engle, was like, "Oh, I wasn't top of my class, I've just kind of learnt a bit." And then he just wipes the floor with anyone. And if Yoda had done that and fought a bit with Dooku and then jumped back, and then the lightsaber by itself was doing stuff while he was like trying to tend to Obi-Wan or Anakin, that'd have again been more of a right. Yoda's more concerned about being defensive, while look how fucking powerful he is. He's doing a lightsaber thing by itself. How nuts is that? Maybe the technology wasn't there, maybe the idea wasn't, but that is again another way you could have shown Yoda's feat of strength without him being, a jumping bean.
I think that would have worked better if he'd have been like hand at the back, kind of, I'm going to move the lightsaber from here whilst I'm dealing with Obi-Wan.
And then Dooku gets through it at one point, and then Yoda uses the Force to like hold him back or something, while like it's something almost full, like something is about to kill Obi-Wan.
Which would then be like when Dooku goes, "Shit, I can't win this fight. Let's retreat."
Yeah, Yoda like lifts him up and like throws him aside, and then as this thing falls on Obi-Wan, and that's when he does that thing where he has to stop, and that's how Dooku escapes. Like the same beats can be hit. It's just no one reined George Lucas back enough, unfortunately. So I know, Maff, you've got some questions, but is there anything else that, Dave, you wanted to mention about Attack of the Clones? I know we'll do a mini wrap-up at the end, but anything you want to mention about Clone Wars we haven't yet before we delve into the questions?
I think the early tone, I mentioned Blade Runner at the top. What I found interesting is, it's almost like a Batman comic at the start. It goes into Obi-Wan, the world's greatest detective kind of thing. And I thought that was interesting if again, it sort of just didn't quite feel like Star Wars. But he's sort of the detective, but he's a bit rubbish as well, isn't he? I mean, Dooku literally tells him, there's the Republic's under the power of a great Sith Lord. He tells him right there, Palpatine has just got emergency powers to overrule the Republic. You say, okay, in this film, Obi-Wan might not know, but he should do by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith. Terrible detective. But no, like I say, again, it sounds like I'm moaning. I do enjoy the movie. I think it could have had so much cut out of it. A good 40 minutes could come out of this, and I think you'd have a really tight movie. And not just like cutting out the love scenes, because even though I don't think they've got any chemistry, you kind of need to have at least some of that stuff in there. But there's a lot of like game demo type things in here as well. So yeah, no, it was good. It was good fun. Can't wait to get on to Revenge of the Sith.
Well, I don't know when we're going to do that, because I know obviously we've got the Clone Wars next, and then are we going to watch all of the Clone Wars and then save Revenge of the Sith for after the Clone Wars?
Oh, that is I was assuming we'd do Revenge of the Sith, even though like, are we going chronologically? Is that the? I
don't know. I know the next we were planning on doing is the Clone Wars, but we can do Revenge of the Sith as well. It's not. Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars film. That and Return of the Jedi are my two favorites. So like I could, again, that's one of my favorite films ever, I'd say. It's not one of the best films ever made, don't get me wrong, but I adore that film. But it depends, because if we want to watch the prequels and then the Clone Wars movie, or if we
much watching the Clone Wars, the movie and the series, will that affect? I mean, I've seen Revenge of the Sith several times, but how much will that elevate watching it again?
Yes. Season 7, all I will say about it is that there are elements and things that run at the same time as the events of Revenge of the Sith.
Right. Well, because, I mean, it depends how far you guys want to kind of go with this. But if you want to do everything in chronological order, we could do Clone Wars, then Revenge of the Sith. I don't know where Solo fits. Is that after Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, Solo's about six. The start of Solo is about 6 years after Revenge of the Sith, and then there's the 3-year gap in the film, and then the rest of it's.
Which then we've also then got.
There's Rogue One, the original trilogy, and the sequels.
Yeah.
There are a lot.
It depends whether you want to sit through and watch them all.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if next year we could do Clone Wars movie for next Clone Wars movie. Then we could do all of the Clone Wars for the next year, and then the following year, so 2025. If you're not sick of me by then, we could then do a combination of there's Tales of the Jedi, there's 3 seasons of the Bad Batch will be out by then, and then there's also the other films. So we could just do an episode. If you thought of the Tales of the Jedi as one, and which me and Dave did a while ago, and then the Bad Batch, the 3 seasons of that makes 4. And then you've got essentially 7 films. No.
When does the Bad Batch fit in? Is that after? That's Clone
directly
Wars,
after Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Bad Batch is essentially seasons almost 8, 9, 10 of Clone Wars, in a way. But we're not there yet. We'll watch Clone Wars movie next, then we'll figure it out. We'll see what we fancy. But that could do us for Clone Wars watching for years until there's another animated series out. But Maff, you have some questions. You have a little quiz.
If you fancy doing it.
Yep, I'm more than happy. I mean, we can do a thing where you can just ask the question and then, we'll see how me and Dave get on. Maybe put our hands up or something. I don't know. But there's going to be certain questions that Dave might get immediately and I might not. Or ones that, we'll see.
I think all the listeners at home know who's going to win this one.
Yeah, well, maybe you just go first and then once you don't get,
it's amusing because you've actually mentioned some of the answers already. So it's like, okay, here we go.
This film, I do know more than most films. But go ahead, ask the questions. We'll let Dave see if Dave can answer it and then see if not, I can.
Obi-Wan and Anakin are in the elevator going up. What nest did Obi-Wan say that he fell into before Anakin came to save him?
No idea.
Gundarks.
Yeah, Mike got that one. This is a nice, easy one. How long's it been since Anakin had last seen Padmé?
10 years?
Yep.
Oof, blimey.
All right, this has been mentioned as well. What's the name of the assassin?
Can you remember, Dave?
Oh, I can't, but I know you mentioned him before. Him or her?
Zam Wessel. She's a Claudite, which is a shape-shifting species.
Bonus point.
What race is Dexter Jettster?
Do you know this, Dave?
Nope.
It's a Basilisk.
Yeah,
he's great. He's hundreds of years old. He's great. I love Dexter's calf. He's such a cool character. He's in the High Republic. I love him.
It's one of those things when he kind of came on to it. There seemed like there's a lot of chemistry, obviously, between them both, and that's like, where's that from?
Yeah, the chemistry between them is more than the chemistry between Anakin and Padme.
Yeah, and it's like, now, I don't know if that's going to be in Clone Wars, if there's something there, but
no, Dexter's not in any. Until recently, he wasn't in any other Star Wars content. He was in a smidge of Legends. He's in the book Padawan, which is there actually. The book Padawan by Kirsten White. This is about Obi-Wan as a Padawan. There we go. He's in that. You get to see how they meet. And aside from that, he's mentioned in one of the certain point of view books. There's I think Return of the Jedi. There's a Dexter Jettster story there. And aside from that, he's annoyingly, he's not in the Clone Wars off the top of my head. He's barely mentioned elsewhere, apart from the High Republic, which obviously is hundreds of years before. But he was dated Maz Kanata for a while, actually.
You don't get extra points for all this, you know.
Who was the Jedi Master who ordered the clone army?
Oh, God.
I'll just put Mike's name there.
No, I bloody know it as well.
Yeah, they say it in Tales of the Jedi and in the Clone Wars a bit. There's a Clone Wars arc about him, isn't there?
Oh, God. Oh, it's going to piss me off because you're going to say it and I'm going to go, yeah, it was definitely them. No, go on. Queen. No, go on. Tell me.
Sifo Dias.
Sifo Dias, yeah.
You're going to say Quinlan Vos.
Yeah.
Which no, he's a great character, but no, he's in the Clone Wars.
Who's
So,
Anakin?
can I just ask, actually,
Go
because
ahead.
it wasn't clear to me exactly what had happened with the ordering of the army. So,
Yeah, it's. Do we just kind of explain?
yeah, I was curious about that.
It's a bit spurious because eventually we get a tiny bit of it in Attack of the Clones, a smidge of it in Tales of the Jedi, and then a bit of it in the Clone Wars, and a bit of it in the book Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin Scott. Essentially, Sifo Dias and Count Dooku were like best friends when they were young. Sifo Dias constantly had these visions of terrible stuff happening. He'd like have 4 seizures basically, and the Jedi Order wouldn't listen to his visions or take anything seriously, even though they kept coming true and atrocities kept happening, which was one of the reasons Dooku left the Order. And then Dooku and Palpatine essentially orchestrate, like they trick Sifo Dias into being like, look, he kept having these visions of this extermination, the Jedi's going to come, we're going to need there's a war going to happen, we're going to need an army, and it kind of led him to kind of breadcrumbed him to do the Camino stuff with them basically manipulating him, and orchestrated his death to look like an accident afterwards, before he could really report any of what he'd kind of done. But he'd kind of gone against the Jedi Council's orders. So Dooku kind of planted the seed of the idea, along with his own Force visions that Sifo Dias was happening. Sifo Dias did actually order the clone army himself, and he was essentially, as far as we can tell, going to go back to the Jedi and go, look, this is what I've done. I've taken the step. And in his transit back, he was killed to look like an accident.
Right. He must have had a high limit on his credit card as well, because that must have cost quite a bit. I wasn't sure where all the invoices were going for the clone army.
Well, I think it was. I feel like this might be wrong, this bit, so this is the part of canon trivia that don't quote me on, look at this up, friends, but I think because the Count is the Count of Sereno, and he's absolutely minted, he, I think, put some of the money towards it. I think he kind of helped fund it a bit, because Dooku's who found Jango Fett. He hired Jango Fett. He pays Jango Fett. So, like, he's directly linked in that regard. So I think, along with him kind of paying Jango Fett and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because he asked Jango, doesn't he, whether it was Sifo Dias, and he says no, it was someone called Tyrannus, I think he says.
Yes, and Darth Tyrannus is the name of Dooku's Sith name.
Yeah.
Go on then, Maff.
Who's Anakin's stepbrother?
It's Uncle Owen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Owen Lars.
What music is playing when Anakin goes to find his mum?
What's the name of the song? Is it Binary Sunset?
Nope.
Come
on, Dave.
It's not Duel of the Fates, surely.
It is.
Is it? Oh, right.
Oh, wow.
That's the only one I know, really.
I was going to say, I didn't say that because I was like, I didn't think it was in that film, but I was wrong. Is that when he's on the speeder bike?
He's on the speeder bike. It came on and I thought, I like this.
Should have known that. Disappointed in myself.
Get in.
You said it with such confidence as well. Which arm does Dooku cut off Anakin? You got a 50-50 chance.
I think it's the left, isn't it? Or certainly the one that gets pinned down earlier in the gaming sequence, I think is the left. But for Luke, it's the right. I'm going to go right, actually.
I think, I was going to lean right because I think he's right-handed and stuff. But I think Mark Hamill's actually left-handed, which I think is part of the reason they did the switcheroo.
Right.
But yeah, sorry.
What is the name of the handmaiden of Padmé who she says goodbye to before she goes off with Anakin?
I have trivia about this, so I know this.
Yeah.
Pass.
Dorme, played by Rose Byrne. She's one of the many handmaidens. In fact, I was literally doing an episode on it today for Star Wars Comics and Canon about a Darth Vader arc about the handmaidens, and there's Dorme, Saber, Rabe, Erte, and I can't remember the name of the one that dies at the start of the film. But yeah, she survives.
I couldn't find the name for that.
Yeah,
I was going to ask what she was called, but
yeah, I can't remember. There's also like 3 other handmaidens that aren't ones I've just mentioned, but they all live until past Empire Strikes Back, and they interact with Vader knowing he's Anakin in the 2020 Vader run. It's really interesting, and he kind of sees in Dorme, the one that Rose Byrne plays, and Sabe, Sabe is Keira Knightley's character in Phantom Menace. He sees in Sabe more so like what Padme could have been, and tries to kind of bring her into the Empire, and he keeps having like flashbacks to him reaching for Padme, saying, "Take my hand," and she's like, "You're going down a path I can't follow," and he's trying to replicate that with Saber, trying to like get his Padme back. It's really interesting. It's a really, really cool arc. But yeah, it delves into the handmaidens and all that stuff, and the Queen's trilogy by E.K. Johnston, Queen's Peril, Queen's Shadow, and Queen's Hope. That goes into the handmaidens, and they interact with like Shmi Skywalker. Like Padme organized them to go to Tatooine and try and free the slaves. The thing that Anakin couldn't do, and the Jedi couldn't do, Padme and her handmaidens try and organize the freeing of slaves on Tatooine, and even interact with Beru Lars as well. So there's this whole tapestry of cool stuff of the handmaidens. So
the one that I noticed, the one that died at the start, you know, she says, "Sorry, Your Majesty, I failed you." And I'm thinking, well, you didn't really. You sort of did a bang up job. That's pretty much your job, is to take one for the team.
Oh, brilliant.
Where did Jango Fett say to Obi-Wan he was recruited from?
Oh God, the planet itself. I was asked this in a trivia question for a pub years ago. It's not Mygito. It's like an asteroid belt or the moon of something. It's not Kessel.
If you're listening from the pod, you should see Mike's face here trying to work it out.
It's like
brilliant.
It's like the belts of Cynthia or something like that. I can't remember.
You want to crack, Dave?
No idea.
The moon of Bogdan.
Bloody hell, moon of Bogdan. Yeah.
This might test you as well. What was the name of the boy Padme was talking about in the past to Anakin?
Oh God, that's a hard one. Yeah, who he gets jealous of.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of the boy at all.
Paolo.
The least Star Wars name in Star Wars.
Paolo.
Yeah.
There's got to be a friends link there, hasn't it? Wasn't that Paolo?
Oh,
who Rachel was going out with, that Ross was getting all
the
jealous
Italian
of.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's jealous of Paolo.
How many people went with Clegg Lars to search for Shmi?
Shmi.
Wasn't it 12 went and 5 came back or something? I'm just going to throw a dart at the dartboard.
I was going to say something quite close. I think it was like 13 or 15 and only 3 remained.
30.
30
went.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And 8 came back?
4 came back. That was the next question.
Yeah.
What was offered to Obi-Wan in the bar to buy?
Death sticks.
Yeah.
I know that one, yes.
Do you know the name of the guy who sells him, tries to sell him Death Sticks?
Obviously not.
Elan Sleaze Bogano. Because George Lucas hated smoking, so he made a character called Elan Sleaze Bogano to try and sell Obi-Wan cigarettes.
You know, I do like how he tells him to go and rethink his life, but I think the Death Sticks thing was another one that jumped out at me. It's like, oh God, they've got English words for everything. But, you know, rather than calling them cigarettes, you know, don't call them space cigarettes or death sticks or something like that. It's just nonsense.
Also, you can see in that bar scene in the background, you can see the chap who plays Jar Jar, Ahmed Best.
Oh, really?
He plays, yeah. So I think technically speaking, he's played 3 characters in Star Wars, which is Jar Jar, Keller and Beck, and that character. But I can't remember if that was its own character or that was meant to be like Keller and Beck in incognito, you know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last one. What are the colours of the lightsabers seen in the Battle of Geonosis?
Purple. It's got to be green and blue, hasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, there's no yellow lightsabers at that time,
no.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Good questions, though, Maff. I like them.
That was more luck than judgment. I forgot about the yellow ones.
Yeah, there's no prequel yellow. I mean, originally George Lucas there's only 3 colors, which is red, blue, green, and then because of Samuel Jackson, he changed the entirety of the lightsaber canon.
And then we've got multicolored now.
I thought you were going to ask about the librarian because she pops up as well in the Vader comics, doesn't she?
Yeah, Joe Castaneau.
Yeah.
She is my least favorite. When I was a kid, seething with anger at her of how rude she was to my boy. Yeah, it was like, oh, there's a planet system called Camino. I've been told it's here. If it is not in the archives, it does not exist. So, well, fuck you then. And you're wrong as well.
Yeah.
See, again, why didn't they kind of investigate that bit that someone's kind of deleted that from the archives? It's like it's not in the archives, didn't exist. And then even Yoda goes, well, obviously go to the centre of where this place is and you'll find it.
But he's not really that arsed, is he? He's not as arsed as he should be. He's like, oh, I'm just going to teach the younglings a bit more, or Obi-Wan's lost a planet he has. You're the fucking head of the Jedi. You should be over there yourself.
You should be looking up how someone's got into the Jedi archives, deleted a planet. What else could they have done?
Yeah, stop playing with the kids.
Yeah. You do get in Tales of the Jedi, you get that bit explained, which is quite cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's because Tales of the Jedi, it's split between the 2 characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite cool. I love those questions, though, Maff.
Very good
fun. Very good fun. And I got to flex more a little bit, which is what I like, Make it sound like I'm the smartest in the room when only the subject is Star Wars and nothing else ever. Well, I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation, both the quiz as well. It's been great fun. But is there any final words that either of you want to say about the film? And then we'll do plugs or anything else to do with leading on to Clone Wars. Megan has confirmed she'll be joining us for the Clone Wars movie, which I'm very excited for.
Can I just say, just for Dave's ego, that you got 5 questions right, Mike, and Dave got 6.
Really?
Fair enough. You went first.
To be fair, a lot of those were handed to me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the lightsaber cutting off hand thing, that was a guess being right. And then the music one, I legit didn't know. With Star Wars music, I'm really bad. Although I know in universe, I know the names of more songs than out of universe. I know that the song that for Igrin, Da'an, and the Modal Nodes plays in the cantina in A New Hope is called "Mad About Me." I know that. And I know who Max Rebo is and Droopy McCall, but I don't know the name of any Star Wars songs bar Binary Sunset and Duel of Fates. Which is quite bad.
We'll let you off.
But have you, Maff, have you enjoyed Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones more than you thought you would on this rewatch? And has it made you more or less hyped for the Clone Wars?
It's funny. I've enjoyed going back to watch them. There's flaws, but the thing is, it's like, I mean, Dave does this every week. An old film, you can always pick up faults. There's always things that we can look and go, that won't work in this day and age, and things like that. But I've enjoyed going back to them. I've enjoyed the spark I've got for Star Wars again. I'm looking forward to Clone Wars the movie, maybe. But I think that's one of the ones I will watch with George. He may actually get a bit, because I think you've mentioned that it's aimed more at the kids.
It's more like Young Jedi Adventures.
Which I think he may sit down and watch that. He may be all right with it. But yeah, it's been fun to go back and kind of see it through different eyes now. And yes, there's faults there, but all in all, it's Star Wars. So Dave mentioned it last time. Even shit pizza is pizza. You're still going to probably enjoy it. There's flaws there, there's problems there, but it takes me back to my childhood. It takes me back to enjoying, things like that. And that, at the end of the day, that's the idea of it. I'm reading the comics and that, so it's sparked this thing that I've missed. And it's great that I get to come and kind of we come and have a chat about it and kind of pick up phone. And the stuff we would change, but at the same point, do we really want to change too much about it? Because then my version would be completely different to your version.
Yeah, and there's something to be said, like people have said before, that when it comes to making Star Wars content, a lot of the time what you want is someone who doesn't actually like Star Wars as much. Like, I'm a super fan, and I know all these ins and outs, and there'd be probably things I'd put in a Star Wars film, I'd be like, that's so cool. And everyone else would be like, I didn't even understand this was a thing. I didn't understand what you did was even a reference to anything. And that's why I think something like Andor works so well, because the people involved in Andor, some of them really like Star Wars, don't get me wrong, but, the showrunners, they like Star Wars as much as the average person likes the original trilogy, whereas Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and a lot of involved in the Disney Plus series are obsessed with Star Wars. They've read loads of Legends, they've done all this crazy stuff, and they're like, they love Star Wars like I do. And sometimes you need someone who just wants to write a good story in the Star Wars universe, not write a good Star Wars story, because those are two different things. And I think that's the problem, is a good Star Wars story is completely subjective to whoever's consuming the Star Wars content. I love prequels. I think they're amazing. I probably enjoy watching the prequel trilogy more than I enjoy watching the original trilogy, even though the originals are better. And my two favorite films, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith. Return of the Jedi is the generally the most divisive of the original trilogy as well. So there's all these things of what we like about Star Wars that's different, and it's one of the things I love about these conversations, why I'm always happy to talk Star Wars. But I'm excited for you to watch Clone Wars, and I'm so happy to hear that, your love of Star Wars has been, reignited somewhat. And, you reading the comics warms my heart. And, when you occasionally message me like, I just got this bit with the Darth Vader comics. I'm like, boy, I love it. It's great. And how much you're loving 000 and BT1. They're so good. They're so good. Well, Dave, with this watch, how have you felt on this? Another rewatch of the prequels, and how you're feeling going into the Clone Wars movie in the series?
Yeah, I mean, I'd forgot that we were going to do Clone Wars, and so I'd calibrated my mind that Revenge of the Sith was next, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. I'm going to watch a great movie, or I'm going to watch Clone Wars. Okay. So what I'd say about this movie, I feel like, for me, I would score this almost exactly the same as Phantom Menace. I think both of them have, moments and clever overarching story points, with lots of flawed bits in between. But I don't think there's much to choose in between them at all. I think you could put a paper in between them. So, but yeah, I mean, spoiling what I think of Revenge of the Sith, but having gone back to that more recently, it is so much better. But again, because it's filled in by Clone Wars as well, which, so you can never unsee that stuff. But yeah, kind of looking forward. I guess I'm looking forward for Maff watching and maybe George as well, watching Clone Wars. And then I remember, shit, I have to watch it as well.
Well, I'm hoping for an epic Megan Spider-Man 3-star rant. That's what I'm striving for. What's getting me through the Clone Wars is Megan, her review of it. Like, I want to hear Matt's thoughts on it, but in all honesty, I want to hear Matt's thoughts more so on certain arcs of the Clone Wars. Like, I've got secondhand excitement. Like, when we were watching Star Wars Rebels together, we were doing it in whole seasons. And with Clone Wars conversations, there's certain seasons we're going to split a little bit, because like seasons, I think 3 and especially 4, you could almost do an entire episode of this whole discussion on just 3 or 4 episodes of the Clone Wars series 4. Like, certain collections of them, it's mind blowing. So we'll split them a little bit. But with Rebels, it was like the whole seasons. And although I love the fact we did Rebels reviewed, it's like there's so much in certain seasons, especially in the finale. But I know Maff kind of knew bits and pieces about Rebels anyway, and there's dramatic tension taken away because about Ahsoka and stuff. But the finale of Series 4 and the Jedi Knight episode and all those things, I was like, so much secondhand excitement. Again, for me to rewatch it because I love seeing those. But for you to experience it for the first time, Maff, I'm just like, I'm excited for the Clone Wars.
The Jedi Knight episode is just it's one of those that will stick with me for a long time, and it's just such good writing. Now, if they can take a smidget of that and that's in Clone Wars, I'm gonna love it. Again, it's Star Wars, so there probably will be there's certain episodes in Rebels which are like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of.
There's a lot more of them in Clone Wars in the early seasons.
Which I'm not surprised if there's 22 episodes each season. There's got to be a lot of filler and that, but they are only, I think they're about 20, 30 minutes
20, yeah. All the episodes are 20 minutes, yeah.
And that, so, you know, you can put up with a bit of filler if it leads to something. I think that's possibly the issue. I think I probably enjoyed Attack of the Clones a bit more than Phantom Menace, to be fair. I think, although it's longer, and we have that love story that don't kind of fit, I think it goes past a lot quicker. I think Phantom Menace kind of, there's a lot of setup, and there's a lot of explaining, you know, who all these characters are and what's going on. I think I would say maybe a bit on your side here of that Attack of the Clones is a better film than Phantom Menace. It's nowhere near as good as Revenge of the Sith. And that, I know that even without going back and watching it, I know that's going to be the case. I'm sorry. But I've enjoyed it a lot more. I didn't remember it that well. And going back and watching it, I think there is actually a good film here. And it didn't feel like it dragged along. So, but it makes me excited to see what's going to come. And again, once, you know, I don't know if I should be saying this, but once I've finally finished watching all Clone Wars, to go back and watch all these again may kind of add a bit more to it.
Mm-hmm. The more Star Wars you consume, the better it gets. And the Clone Wars is one of the best bits of Star Wars you can consume, really. So I'm very excited for you to experience that. But we'll wrap up here, so we'll do our plugs. So Dave, what are you up to at the moment with all your many podcasts? What's going on? This will probably come out near, like, you don't have to spoil what's coming up in the VHS or anything, but this won't be out for a couple more weeks, just so you're aware. So you can see what episodes will already have come out.
Couple more weeks. So if I waffle for ever so slightly, I will talk about. So this week we've had, as we're recording, so it would have been out already. So Gladiator, we've just reviewed, not the Russell Crowe Gladiator, but the 1992 Gladiator. And the week after that, we're going to do Big by Tom Hanks. Can't believe we've gone all of this time without doing that one, but we finally talked about that and how wrong quite a lot of it is.
Yeah.
So just a bit weird, but yeah, I know. I did this last time. I announced the next one, which Maff doesn't know, so I'm not going to do that this time.
Also, if you are part of the Patreon and you get the late fees, you get a brilliant episode about a film called Rubber.
Have you watched it?
I got it on DVD.
Really?
Yeah. It's like I've got a couple of weirder films that other people have never seen or heard of, but I need to hear that.
That is impressive. So from 2010, that was a Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. That is the one. Yeah. I am impressed with that.
The best killer tire movie you'll ever see. And it's right. It is the best killer tire
probably
movie.
The worst as well, but
I think it came out in a good year, didn't it?
I would not dispute that.
That was a good one. I appreciate that pun.
I'm surprised that didn't come up in the episode, to be fair. But...
Yeah, a missed opportunity, that, wasn't it? So yeah, and obviously we do the Chris and Dave's reality TV cast as well. Just finishing off Married at First Sight, and then we're trying to figure out what to do after that. I'm a Celebrity is coming up, but I'm not sure I want to. It is a big commitment. It's like 6 out of 7 nights. I'm not sure I've got that in me, so it might have to be something else.
That's a lot.
But yeah.
And Maff, what have you got going on at the moment?
Just this. A bit quiet. Christmas is coming up, so it gets quite busy around here anyway. So yeah, I just look forward to doing this, I suppose, at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe something will appear in the pipeline, but yeah.
What's going to be fun is with Clone Wars, we're going to watch the Clone Wars movie, and after it, you might enjoy it. You're probably going to enjoy it more than we did because you're in this Star Wars renaissance, whereas I watched it when I'd started kind of not caring about Star Wars as much. Revenge of the Sith finished, Star Wars basically was done, and Doctor Who started up, which was my current love at that time. And then the Clone Wars movie came out. I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. Whereas you've got like we're all shitting on the Clone Wars movie so much. It's probably not going to be as bad as we even remember it.
I mean,
also
I'm gonna
it.
watch it with George anyway.
Yeah.
So there could be, the thing is, he may really enjoy it, and he enjoyed Young Jedi. And
I enjoy Young Jedi. I've watched it all, but
it could be one of those things that might then kind of, I mean, it might even get his older brother to sit down and watch it with us as well. See if Alex wants to watch that as well. But it could be a kind of a starting block to kind of bring this Star Wars into, annoying the rest of the family. I've already been talking about getting a lightsaber, and Amanda's like, no. So, yeah, but,
Well, I mean, I will say, if he got into Clone Wars, that would be cool. But then we would have to put some sort of warning as certain seasons come up, because it's like, oh, it's a kid's show, is it? Yeah, here's a war crime. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
His cold-blooded murder. Oh, okay. What's the rating for the show? 6+. Okay.
Yeah, because Rebels did that a little bit a few at times. It's like,
yeah, there's a couple Rebels episodes you're like, oof, and there's some Clone Wars episodes you're like, oh god. But we'll get there. I'm very excited. Very, very excited for Clone Wars Conversations next year. So friends, make sure you subscribe to the feed of Comics in Motion, or if you're watching the video version of this at youtube.com/genuine chit-chat, make sure you subscribe. Check out the episodes of, the last time we did this, which is Phantom Menace. Check that out. And all the episodes of Star Wars Rebels Reviewed, including the wrap-up episode. And then, we've got the Clone Wars movie coming out. I imagine what's going to happen is we'll watch the Clone Wars movie shortly, and then we'll record to release December. But I imagine what's going to happen is what happened with Rebels, which is when we do the Clone Wars stuff, me and Dave will be like waiting until almost the last minute to finish off Clone Wars. We'll try and watch a few in the month, but then it'll be like a race to the finish the last week. Maff will finish it all in like a week. Be like, guys, can we record the episode, please? I want to know what happens next. And me and Dave are like, meh. And it's like, you guys have seen this. This is okay for you to wait. You know what happens. I have to wait here for you guys to catch up, for us to record an episode so I can see what's happening next. And so that's going to be funny as well. But, it's just been so much fun chatting Star Wars with the both of you. It's absolute delight. Thank you for the work you put in, Maff, with the questions. And thank you, Dave, for making the time. So, friends, you can find me...
Turning up.
Yeah, basically, you're being the Chris of this trifecta.
How's your shoulder?
Yeah.
It's the Padmé ripping her clothes, isn't it, in the Geonosis? That's a problem.
Yeah. That bit of the videotape was...
But, friends, you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat, Instagram, Twitter/X, and Facebook and TikTok and all that jazz. Look at all the Star Wars conversations I've had on YouTube. I recently spoke to Ethan Sachs about Star Wars and his indie comic A Haunted Girl. You don't have to have read any of his comics to enjoy the conversation. Great fun. And I've got another Star Wars author coming up soon, so that's going to be very, very exciting as well. That may or may not be up by the time this comes out, but just check out the other stuff I've done. Friends, thank you for tuning in. As always, we'll talk to you in a few weeks' time with the Clone Wars Conversations Ultimate Prequel with the Clone Wars movie, and then we'll start off 2024 with the Clone Wars series. Friends, thank you for listening. Dave and Maff, thank you for joining, and we'll speak to you very soon. So, of course, may the Force be with you.
And be with you.
And that's the end of the episode and also the quiz. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, my friends, please let us know what you think of Attack of the Clones and the Phantom Menace and the prequels in general. Do you side more with myself, or are you more on what Maff kind of thinks, or more so like Dave? Please let us know. And let us know how you did on the quiz as well. I thought it was a really, really cool quiz that Maff put together, so kudos to him. In addition to that, as I mentioned in the start, please check out my other Star Wars conversations. Very recently, I spoke with Ethan Sachs, who's the author of the Bounty Hunters comics, as well as loads of other cool Star Wars miniseries, and lots of non-Star Wars content as well, including A Haunted Girl, which is a miniseries he created with his daughter, being inspired by her struggle with mental health, and mixing in some horror elements and things like that. It's a really, really cool miniseries, and it's very, very important, so please check out the conversation, and of course, support Ethan and Naomi in their release. Go check out A Haunted Girl. I've also got another Star Wars interview planned for tomorrow, so if that all goes to plan, you'll be hearing me talk about it next week, and then it should be released probably the week after that. I've also had plenty of other Star Wars related conversations. I've spoken with Cavan Scott, Claudia Gray, George Mann, even Paolo Villanelli, who is the artist who works with Ethan Sachs on quite a few of the Bounty Hunters comics as well. So please check those out. If you're not already subscribed to Genuine Chit-Chat's YouTube channel, please go over there, check out the playlists. You can check out Star Wars conversations, and all my Star Wars author related conversations, as well as quite a few others, are all in there, and the vast majority have video as well. In addition to that, please check out my show Star Wars Comics in Canon. All the episodes are on YouTube on its own feed, which you may be listening to right now, or on the feed of Comics in Motion. You never have to have read a single Star Wars comic in your entire life to enjoy that, so please check that out. I go through the plot details of the Star Wars comics in question of the week, and then I give additional information and context and connect it to other pieces of Star Wars content as well. So it widens your understanding of the canon if you've already read the comics, and if you've never read the comics, it even deepens your understanding knowing some of those stories that you may have missed. And if you haven't, obviously go back and check out the episode of The Phantom Menace, which was released only 2 weeks ago on whatever feed that you're listening to this on. And you can check out Star Wars Rebels Reviewed as well, which is where myself, Dave and Maff went through each season of Star Wars Rebels and reviewed it, unsurprisingly. Megan also makes an appearance on our 5th episode, which is like the predecessor to Ahsoka, and I've done weekly discussion episodes on all the Ahsoka episodes as well from that series, so make sure you check those out as well. Maff made an appearance on one, and Dave made an appearance on another one. And then obviously in 2024 we will be doing the Clone Wars conversations, which I've mentioned numerous times in this recording, so I will not delve into it again here. But in a couple weeks' time, we will be recording our Clone Wars the movie review, so that's going to be a fun one, especially because Megan's on board and she hated it the first time she saw it, so we'll see if she still feels that way. And what else is coming up next week? Well, next week for listeners on the feed of Comics in Motion and Star Wars Comics in Canon, you will hear my Darth Vader 2020 episode, where I'm delving into issues 30, 31 and 32. They're all written by Greg Pak, and I talk about the Handmaidens quite a lot in there, so if you want to hear even more information on the Handmaidens than I spoke about in this episode, make sure you subscribe and then tune in next week. On the feed of Genuine Chit-Chat, I've just recorded a conversation with Dr. Blaine Leeds. He's been a dentist for several decades, and he's recently delved into the world of sleep because he's found a lot of interesting connections between sleep issues, primarily caused by sleep apnea, and teeth. It's a really, really interesting conversation, and we hear a lot of cool things about sleep and teeth and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you tune in for that one because you're probably going to learn quite a few things unexpectedly, as I did. And the video version for that will be out on YouTube as well. Aside from that, my friends, make sure you keep an ear out for the Disney Discussions number 10 on social media. Myself, Rhea, Spider-Dan and Megan will be posting our request for yourselves to send in your Disney film suggestions, and then we're going to go through them, each choose one, and then we're going to let yourselves all decide on which two we're going to tackle for Disney Discussions number 10. So obviously we want to get you involved in that, and if you don't already follow me on social media, follow me at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, X and Facebook, as well as on TikTok. Subscribe on my YouTube channel, leave a review. If you leave a review and send me a screenshot or even a rating or anything on Spotify, anything like that, send me a screenshot and I'll send you a free episode from my Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/genuinechitchat, you get instant access to over 190 episodes of Afterthoughts. So some of them are Star Wars Legends book reviews that I do. So I go through the plot details of these Star Wars Legends books and give my thoughts on it. So it's a really great way to widen your understanding of Star Wars Legends if you haven't really delved in. As well as myself and Megan reviewing TV shows and movies and road trips and live performances we've seen. So it's a really great way to not only support this show, but also you get loads of bonus content. You get at least one episode a week. And whenever I release episodes that are across multiple feeds, or if they're Patreon exclusive episodes that I release to you normal listeners, then the patrons get a bonus episode as well. We just finished spooky season, so we tackled all the Nightmare on Elm Street films, as well as a couple of other non-Nightmare films in between. And as we get into the Christmas season, Megan is going to make me watch a lot of Christmas films, including some of those cheesy Hallmark Christmas movies, so make sure you keep an eye out for those as well. But friends, that's going to be enough from me, so thank you as always for listening. I hugely appreciate it. I'll talk to you next week, either with my conversation with Dr. Blaine Leeds or my Darth Vader episode, or both if you like listening to all of my content, which if you do, I hugely appreciate it. Please share this with your friends. Keep an eye on social media for the Disney Discussions request for films. Make sure you subscribe. And of course, I hope you have a wonderful time, and may the Force be with you.